Sabina was a young teacher, 28 years old, a smile that changed the atmosphere in the classroom. Family, friends, a quiet life. That evening she left the house, not for adventure, not in pursuit of something dangerous, just for a walk. She walked through Cater Park in London. It was her usual route. But behind the trees, she was already waiting for someone who should never have been free. A man hiding from the law, an illegal immigrant from the Chinese army, and with empty eyes that reflected neither remorse nor humanity. And then, just a few seconds, a blow, dragging into the bushes, strangulation. It all happened quickly. Only so quickly that passers-by did not even realize that they had witnessed a crime. Sabina was gone as never before. This was not the first manifestation of aggression, or even the second. Selimek had long been known to the police. He had been detained for assault, for threats, for attempts to strangle. Several women had already complained about him. He was dangerous. They knew it. They saw it. But again and again, they let him go. The reports contained short formulations, did not pose a threat, lack of sufficient grounds for detention, and between the lines, fear, pain, and ignored pleas for protection. Those who had encountered him before knew that he was capable of more. But the system pretended that everything was under control. A few days before Sabina's murder, he was detained again, on suspicion of violence, and again released, unconditionally, without surveillance, without a ban on approaching public places. So how many warnings does it take for someone to finally react? Where is the line after which a person stops being considered simply problematic and begins to be perceived as a real threat? Can we talk about chance if everything was moving towards this step by step, month by month? After Sabina's murder, London froze for a while. In the first days, there were headlines, promises, alarming comments on social media. But after a week, it became suspiciously quiet. The case was talked about less and less. The evening news switched to other topics, and Sabina's name began to disappear, just as she herself had disappeared that night in the park. Why did this happen? Why do some cases get talked about for weeks, while others are forgotten on the third day? The answer is frighteningly simple. Sabina was a woman, Sabina was Muslim, Sabina was not white, and all of this together made her pain less convenient, less visible, less interesting to those who controlled the agenda. Not because her death was less tragic, but because it did not fit the usual media template. The same thing has happened before. In 2020, 2 black women were murdered, Biba Henry and Nicole Smallman. Their bodies were found not by the police, but by their relatives, because no one was looking, because the system decided that searching was not a priority. And here we go again. A new name, the same reaction, the same gaps, the same explanations. We didn't notice. There's not enough evidence. It's a shame, but... So it turns out that some women's lives are considered more valuable than others? That the pain of one girl's family is less sympathetic simply because of her accent, her clothes, or her skin color? If society continues to judge someone's worth by their last name and skin tone, can we even talk about equality? Or do we continue to live in a world where even death has its privileges? When Selimek was detained, he didn't resist. He was silent. He looked at the floor. He didn't ask questions. And what struck the investigators most of all, he showed no fear or emotion. He didn't try to justify himself. He didn't say a word about Sabina. No regret, no anger, no confusion. Emptiness. He was sent to Broadmoor Clinic for a psychiatric evaluation. There, the doctors came to a frightening conclusion. He understands everything. He is sane. He understands what he did. And he doesn't care. No trace of remorse. No desire to atone. No attempt to look inside himself. Only predatory silence and cold detachment. He is not crazy. He is not under the influence of passion. He is simply a man who chose violence and does not think that he did anything wrong. The court found him guilty and sentenced him to life imprisonment, without the possibility of parole. He will never go out on the streets again, never sit next to someone on the subway, never pass by a playground. And this is perhaps the only thing in this story that worked as it should. But what is the point of punishment if it would not have happened if he had not committed the murder? Why did the system, knowing his history, knowing the risks, knowing what he is capable of, never take a single real step to stop him earlier? It turns out that justice came, but too late. Then, when there was nothing left to save, when life ended and only cameras, court records, and flowers on a park bench remained. And what about those who can still be saved? Those who are still alive, but are going the same way? Will anyone listen to the signals next time? When it became known that Sabina had been killed, the city shook. Commemorations took place in London districts. People came with flowers, with placards. Candles were lit, speeches were made. A dull anger hung in the air. For the first time, many realized how vulnerable a woman could be. Just walking home, just living. At that moment, it seemed that something had to change, that the authorities had heard, that the police would understand, that there would be reforms, new protocols, new measures. Everyone was talking about it. Newspapers, television, even officials. It seemed that Sabina had become a symbol. But several weeks passed. The candles went out, the rallies ended, the cameras left. The newspapers switched to a new scandal, a new face, and again, silence. And with it, a familiar feeling. Nothing has changed. What is the price of attention? Why does public outcry last only 3 days? Why is a tragedy that shook a district forgotten faster than a headline about a new fashion? Sabina wasn't the first, and what's scary, she wasn't the last. There have been other cases since then, other women, the same patterns, the same gaps. Maybe we just can't hold on to someone else's pain for longer than a week, or maybe we just don't want to. Sabina did not seek risks. She did not step outside the rules. She did not do anything that could put herself in danger. She simply left the house. She took a short route through the park, as she had done many times. This time, for the last time, her death was not an accident. It was a sequence of systemic failures, bureaucratic indifference, and public apathy. Her murder was the result of no one wanting to look closely, no one noticing, no one intervening, no one reacting. Even though everything was on the surface, Sabina's family was left with questions that no one could answer, with silence in the house, with photographs that now hurt rather than please, and with a feeling familiar to too many, that the life of their daughter, their sister, their friend, was not perceived by the system as important, as worthy of protection. And if we are honest with ourselves, what really changed after her death? Were there new protocols? Were conclusions drawn? Or have we simply moved on to the next tragedy, like a new news feed? How many more women will never make it home? How many more stories will we hear with the same beginning? She was just out for a walk, and the same ending? When violence becomes commonplace and death a statistic, who is to blame? Society? The system? Us? This was case 99. A woman died here who could have been saved, but for that to happen, someone would have to speak up. And we did. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, because behind every story is more than just a tragedy. Behind it is a warning, and perhaps a chance to change something before it's too late.